Welcome to the Runetech Archives. Book 1, Bronze and Blood. Chapter 11, Runes and Ruin. So, warehouse district? I asked as we stepped out of the hospital. Callen side-eyed me, stopping halfway down the stairs. You know it's still an active crime scene, Fade. I could lose my badge. I was pushing him. Again. Vigilantism wasn't his style. He played by the book, even when the book was half-burned and missing pages. Even when the ones who wrote it did everything they could to keep him out of its story. But he had a car, and I was bleeding time. You don't have to come in, I offered, playing my best innocent act. I'll be careful. We can't just ignore what we found. We're close. He shut his eyes, exhaled hard through his nose, and muttered, 5 minutes. You look, we leave. That's it. Deal. Guilt twisted in my gut. I hated using him like this, but I hated dying more. We got in the patrol car. Sunlight broke through the thinning clouds in weak, golden streaks. The city hummed with its usual orchestra. Chatter, tires on wet pavement, wind threading through alleys. Callen cracked the window and fired up the engine. For a moment, it almost felt like a normal afternoon. Almost. Then I remembered the clock ticking toward my execution, and the moment vanished. You got a map? I asked. He popped the glove box and nodded at the folded sheet. I flattened it on the dash and marked the address from Lyra's report. That's where we're headed. That part of town is half condemned, he said, squinting. You sure? Positive. He put the car in gear. The hospital shrank behind us, its bell tower framed against the pale sky. We passed half-flooded districts, sagging copper lines, flickering ether lamps, vendors tucked under patched tarps. A pair of deep-born laborers hauled a crate while a driver leaned on his horn and called something out. Callen's hands tightened on the wheel. Buildings grew older the farther we drove, brick shells wrapped in new wiring, ghosts running on borrowed light. It really was a beautiful day. Shame I couldn't enjoy it. The clouds thickened as we drove, swallowing the sun whole. Maybe they knew something we didn't. The warehouse district sat in the southwest quarter, dry, for now, but only because the river hadn't gotten greedy yet. Burned barrels and makeshift shanties lined the alleys, their residents moving like shadows too thin to cast. Eyes watched from behind torn curtains and rusted sheet metal, but no one spoke. This part of town had learned silence the hard way. Most of the street lamps were shattered, the rest burned low, coughing out their lights in fits of ashen green. The gloom came early here. The firelight from barrels looked along the walls, playing tricks in the corner of your eyes. Trash and worse clung to the gutters. The smell was a living thing, thick, oily, and old, worming its way into your nose and refusing to leave. Callen rode up the cracked window, but the stench didn't care. It seeped in anyway, like it had rights. None of the buildings were intact. Windows blown, doors hanging crooked, bricks bleeding layers of graffiti, names, curses, half-erased warnings, a clash of superstition and spite. He lies waiting and watching, scrawled behind, go back to the water, scaled backs. The city couldn't decide whether to fear the deep or blame it. Further down, someone had tried to paint over with bureau gray, the kind used to whitewash unapproved messaging. The paint was already peeling, the warnings beneath resurfacing. Callen slowed the car to a crawl. The tires hissed through puddles that shimmered faintly with the ether light reflected from the lines above. Whole district's gone to hell, he muttered. Hell found better real estate, I said. This is what's left. And that's when I became aware of it. Every few blocks, the same mark appeared again and again. Runic, but not quite. It twisted across the bricks in a shade too vivid to be old paint, a jagged five-pointed spiral curling inward, trying to swallow itself. At its center, an eye stared out, wide and hollow, ringed with uneven spikes that seemed to pulse when the headlights hit. Above it, a thin figure stretched upward, arms raised in worship or surrender, surrounded by tiny dots like falling stars. The symbol breathed. I swear it did. The air around it pressed inward, like it was inhaling the street. The warehouse we were looking for loomed ahead, a slab of shadow in the dark. Its alleys were empty, unnaturally so. The building needed room to breathe. The symbol was there again, painted across the side door, peeking out from beneath the yellow police tape that fluttered in the wind. Maybe it was meant to keep people out. Maybe it was meant to keep something in. Callen eased the car to the curb and killed the engine. We sat for a long moment, staring. "Well," I said finally, "this definitely looks like the place." "I'd say so." Neither of us moved. The silence stretched thin. 5 minutes, I reminded him. "I'll be in and out." "Don't be ridiculous," Callen said, opening the glove box. He took out his gun and flashlight, checking the cylinder. "I'm coming with." I nodded. No argument this time. I was just glad not to walk in alone. We stepped out. The single street lamp on the block flickered, fighting for life. Thunder rolled somewhere in the distance. The city was setting the stage. I just hoped I wasn't the opening act. Callen raised his flashlight, the beam cutting through the murk. "Let's get this over with." And with that, we moved toward the door. We circled around to the side door, and Callen peeled off the tape with a practiced hand. The flashlight beam cut through the dark, and there it was, that symbol. It wasn't a rune, that much I knew. There was no ether bleeding off of it, no energy whispering at the edge of my senses. It felt like something that belonged on the edge of a map, a warning scrawled in the margins. Here there be dragons. Only this felt deeper, older. Something with too many limbs and a stare that could drive a man insane at a glance. Callen and I exchanged a look. The air changed, not colder, thinner. The ether within was sparse. The hum in the walls flattened into a single low note, steady as a heartbeat under the floor. My skin prickled. Even Callen felt it, even if he didn't know what it was. I saw it in the tight line of his jaw, the small exhale he tried to disguise as focus. He raised his gun, the barrel catching a dim pulse from a dying street lamp, and nodded toward the door. I reached for the handle and swung it open. Above us, the sky crackled open with a flash, then a low growl of thunder. The first drops of rain began to fall, tapping the roof like fingers drumming on a steel coffin lid. I took a deep breath, steadied myself, and stepped forward. As I crossed the threshold, a strange tingle crawled along my arms, followed by a quick pop of pressure in my ears. It was as if the air itself had shifted. I froze, mid-step. "What is it?" Callen asked, voice low. I closed my eyes for a moment, reaching out with the senses I trusted more than sight. Nothing. Just the empty stillness of the warehouse and the faint drumming of the rain on the roof. Nothing. Just an odd feeling, I said, moving forward again. Once I was through, Callen brushed past me and took point. His flashlight swept the room ahead while my eyes traced the details it revealed. Half warehouse, half machine shop. Old equipment stood rusting, once gleaming steel giants corroded and skeletal. Industrial corpses left to rot. Whatever this place used to be, it had long been forgotten. Along one wall, rows of metal shelving jutted out, stacked with parts and scraps. Discarded limbs from mechanical bodies. Everything draped in dust, a thick shroud over the world that was. Above us, the iron rafters groaned, the bones of the building straining to hold its weight. The corrugated roof amplified the growing rhythm of rainfall outside. Two folding glass panels in the center filtered in a pale, storm-choked light. Their sparse streaks made the shadows around them that much deeper. The wooden floor beneath us creaked with every step. I looked down, saw faint footprints in the dust that led toward the far end of the building. I tapped Callen's shoulder and pointed. He nodded, and we followed. The trail ended at a narrow staircase leading down. We descended. Each step on the stone stairs echoed above and below, joining the chorus of thunder outside. The air here felt heavy, metallic, and only got worse the deeper we went, pressing against our ribs. The dim light from above only reached a few feet into the black. Beyond that was a void, a depth that swallowed light whole. When Callen's beam swept across the room, I caught the faint outline of something on the floor. "There," I whispered. He saw it too. We moved closer. slow, careful. The hair on my neck prickled. The shape resolved into a toppled candlestick, its candle a few inches away. One of several. The rest still stood, wax-hearted in long drips like frozen tears. That unease returned, a heavy, pressing sensation crawling over my skin. The air carried the dry scent of dust and ether, and something else, something sour. Then I saw it. Blood. At the center of the room, surrounded by candles, was a circle of runes. Some I knew: containment, channeling, amplification, clean work, precise lines, steady hand. But the others didn't belong to any language I'd ever seen etched, drawn, or dreamed. Angles that refused to meet the way they should, curves that bent twice in the same place. My eyes tried to follow them and got lost halfway through. The kind of geometry that makes your head ache, like your brain's trying to fold the world into shapes it wasn't built for. They pulsed faintly, but not with light. Each mark trying to breathe, but only drowning. At the far edge of the circle lay another smear of blood and matter. I remembered the body in the morgue, the exit wound, brain matter. The nausea hit hard, sharp, and sudden. "By the deep," Callen muttered, his face pale as the stormlight above. Thunder cracked overhead, a low, rolling snarl that made the earth shudder. Or maybe that was just me. I tore my eyes from the carnage and noticed the lectern across the room, standing like a gravestone behind the ring of candles. I circled the scene, careful not to step inside the ritual's boundaries. Callen followed, flashlight steady. An old, leather-brown book sat on the stand, no larger than a paperback, but infinitely heavier. The leather was abyssal black, cracked with age, and stamped with that same symbol from the door outside. It radiated old malice. I flipped it open. The paper was thick, uneven, handmade. Lines of cramped writing filled each page, the language alien, its ink dark but not quite black. Too red, too dry. I didn't want to guess what it was written with. The air around it felt unsettling, as if the room itself was holding its breath. "Any of this feel a tad occult to you?" I asked. "Absolutely," Callen said, voice low. "Cultish, more accurately." "Cult?" "Descendant tides," he said. "Been hearing the name around the precinct. Only in whispers, though. Never heard of 'em." Though as soon as I said it, something clicked. A sea captain rambling along the canal, a slip of paper on a precinct board. Things I didn't think twice about at the time. "That's because any talk about it gets buried. Brass doesn't want to panic. The city's got enough nightmares already." "Besides," he added, "no solid proof they even exist." "This," I said, gesturing to the ritual circle, "feels like proof enough." He nodded. "Agreed. But nothing I could find out about your case mentioned anything about a cult." I turned another page, though I could barely bring myself to touch it. The paper felt dry, but warm. The edge caught my finger, a thin sting that made me flinch. A bead of blood welled up and vanished almost instantly, soaked into the page before it could fall. Paper darkened for a heartbeat, as if it drank. My pulse kicked. I swallowed hard and left the page where it lay. For a brief moment, I swear I heard someone take a deep breath. The hairs on the back of my neck stood to attention. At the very edge of my hearing, there was a murmur I couldn't make out. "What?" I asked, looking at Callen. "I didn't say anything," he said, confused, sweeping the flashlight across the rest of the room. "Kinda need the light, Callen," I muttered. "Hey," he cut in. "Take a look over there." His beam caught two desks shoved into an L shape in the corner. Industrial relics, steel-legged, heavy wood tops scarred from years of machine work. But they'd been repurposed. Runetech. Engraving pens, copper plating, ether conductors. All the tools of the trade. Wait. Bronze. Not copper. The realization hit me like a punch. "This is where the revolver was forged," I said. We crossed over. The air next to the desks hummed faintly, the lingering echo of spent ether. I scanned the tools. The familiarity settled like a stone in my gut. Half of them were mine. My breath caught. Same make, same worn grips, even the etched initials on the handle of one pen, a habit I'd picked up years ago, marking tools like they were extensions of myself. Some of these are the ones that were missing from my shop, I said quietly. He didn't need to say what we were both thinking. Whoever broke into my workshop and stole my tools came here, planted them for evidence. A perfect frame job. I was starting to convince even myself. On the adjoining desk sat glassware, flasks, burners, beakers. Alchemy, not rune work. The scene from Addendum 13 brought to life. I stepped back toward the ritual circle, eyes scanning the layout with fresh understanding. The candles, the blood, the runes. It wasn't just symbolic. It was procedural. I knelt near the edge, still careful not to cross the boundary. The runes were precise. Whoever carved them wasn't improvising. They were following instructions. My mind reached for Addendum 13, a ritual I'd read once, maybe twice, then tried to forget. Bronze dust, blood, synchronizing pulses. Bits and pieces resurfaced, jagged and unwelcome. The originator's blood mixed with ether-saturated bronze dust. The recipient focusing, fixating on the originator until their heartbeats synced, not carving a sigil, becoming it. I swallowed hard. The implications were brutal. A flash of the donor's corpse in the morgue cut across my thoughts. The exit wound, the paint, the blood etching, the timing, it all locked into place. When the circuit collapsed, I heard the line in my head as clearly as if I was reading it from the page. The recipient never awoke. My stomach twisted. Someone had died here, not just killed, but hollowed out, overwritten, used as a vessel to copy me. I forced my eyes back to the circle, to the blood that still glistened in the cracks. Whatever happened here wasn't clean, wasn't controlled, and someone paid for it with their life. But why was he shot? What caused the ether burns? Still, more of the puzzle to fill in. Fade? Callen's voice was low, cautious. I stood slowly, eyes tracing the circle again, the runes, the symbols. No, this isn't where they forged the weapon, I said. The frame, the handle, those were made somewhere else. This place was just for the final steps. Callen frowned. Final steps? Yeah. I walked back over the makeshift workbench. They assembled the gun here, and then did a transference ritual. That's the part that matters. Transfer what? He asked. My sigil. The words tasted bitter. What I know of it doesn't explicitly say anybody needs to be killed, but it's an unfortunate byproduct. Two hearts may beat as one for a time, but only one continues. He looked from the bench to the circle, then to the book on the lectern. That's insane. Yeah, I said, and it worked. Callen stepped closer to the lectern, eyeing the pages but careful not to touch. So whoever performed this, they used another person to copy your heartbeat? Forge your sigil? That way the revolver would read as yours. I nodded, feeling the weight of it settle on my chest. They didn't just frame me, Callen. They used someone to become me, at least long enough to complete the rune line, etch my sigil, and finish the circuit. The room felt smaller suddenly. I glanced toward the blood smear at the edge of the circle. That's what's left of them, I said quietly. The donor, the body in the morgue. Callen's expression darkened. But if this was supposed to kill him, why shoot him? And what was with the ether burns? The same questions I'm asking myself. I glanced over at the lectern again, the book waiting on top. For a moment, it was hard to pull my gaze away. What I've learned about this ritual, which isn't much, doesn't mention anything about the rest of this, I said, gesturing at the site and pulling my eyes away from the lectern. Something else was done here. Something more. Callen crouched down, sweeping his flashlight across the circle again, deliberately avoiding the remains. If I had to guess, I said, voice dripping with uncertainty, whatever this additional portion of the ritual was, it did require a sacrifice. and when it was complete, it lit him up in ether fire. I thought of the body again, the paint, the blood etching. It tracked. Whatever this ritual was, it was old, arcane, forbidden. All this just to frame you for murder? I rubbed a hand across my chin. Yeah, it does seem a bit excessive. If Merrick really did kill his dad, why not just hire a hitman? Or just use a regular gun, Callen said, mostly to himself. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Thunder rolled across the roof, a long, lull exhale that filled the silence. Another question pushed its way through my sleep-starved brain. What about Silas's body? Anything strange happened to him? No clue, Callen said, straightening up. All that's come down the grapevine is that he was shot. That's it. Just about everything else involving your case is being kept pretty tight. Tighter than it should be, if you ask me. The rain had started to fall harder now. Steady, relentless. Like the city itself was mourning what happened here. What if, I said before I even realized I started talking, my sigil wasn't the only thing that was transferred? I don't follow. The idea continued to multiply. I thought about the sigil work on the bronze revolver, the painted runes on the poor soul who died in the circle before us. What if they killed the man here, I said slowly, and the damage was copied over to Silas? As soon as the words left my mouth, I knew it was right. Callen's eyes furrowed as he tried to keep up. So they shoot the victim here, and whatever happens to him is mirrored onto Silas? It matches what you told me earlier about the missing bullet, I said. There was no bullet at the scene because the shot was made here. Then they planted the gun by Silas's body. Gods. We stood in silence, the storm above echoing the weight of what we'd uncovered. What I don't get, I muttered, breaking the silence, is why a cult gets in bed with the mob. Didn't add up. The ascended tides, if they were real, had no reason to mingle with street crime. Yet here they were, crafting a forged, rune-etched bronze revolver for an execution. Two worlds that shouldn't overlap now bleeding into one. That's when we heard it. Thanks for listening to the Runetech Archives. Bronze and Blood, the first book in the series, is available now. This podcast offers a narrated preview of the first half of the story. You can find Bronze and Blood as an ebook on Amazon and Kobo, and in paperback on Amazon as well. If you'd like updates on the series, visit the website to sign up for news, or follow along on social media. Links to everything are in the episode description below. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in Fade's next adventure.